Well, now, um, Mazzy here, Norman Maslov, and I'm with
David
David
Bacon.
Bacon, my co-author in 1982 of The Beatles England. That's why we are here, because we know something about the Beatles, and if we don't know, we always make it up. So the Beatles
Beetle
England,
Boys. The Beetle Boys, as Brendan Lee used to call us.
yeah, the Beatle Boys.
The
We
Beetle
invented
Boys.
Beatle tourism, and there's our Strawberry Fields Forever, Strawberry Fields picture, Liverpool. Okay, enough of that with the self-promo because it's out of print and everything. But this is a sort of a little birthday celebration. Unfortunately, we wish John Lennon was with us, and on October 9th, it would have been John Lennon's 80th birthday in the year 2020. So we're going to go through his catalog, his solo catalog. It'll mostly be discussions on the main catalog. There'll be a few offshoot things of live and singles and a couple of book projects and maybe some boots. I don't really have any boots, but I think David's going to be talking about that. Also this year, the sad part is in December, it's 40 years since John Lennon passed. And it's 50 years this year since the Beatles split up. So God, a lot of anniversaries. 2020 is a shit year in so many levels, but these celebrations are coming up. And part of the reason we're celebrating this, obviously, because 80 is a pretty big birthday. And there is another set coming out called Gimme Some Truth. Now, we do not have this. Both of us have ordered various versions of this. We can talk about that whenever, now or when we get to the comp section. I want to say a couple of things about this first, because I read the forums and social pages and things and reading about it. This is a comp that was curated by Sean Lennon, John's second son, his only son with Yoko. And from my point of view, I think so far, and I haven't heard it except for a couple of released tracks, the remix by Sean with some help. And what I've heard I liked, but what bugs me is the people out in the hinterlands talking about cash grab, yet we need another Lennon comp. First of all, there hasn't been a comp in 10 years. There's no vinyl comp in print now. Sure, you can get used copies and stuff. So to me, this is a major catalog, and whether you buy the double CD or an expanded box set, I think these things should be in print and out there. And if you don't want to buy it, don't friggin' buy it. So that's my initial impression on that. And I'm looking forward to it. You know, artist work should be in print. And what I love about Sean Lennon, Sean is a music guy. He's a fan of his father's work, and he's a fan of the Beatles' work and Paul's work and all the other Beatles. He's a music fan and he knows his stuff. Now, the way he puts these together may be not to everyone's liking, but I'm looking forward to it on the birthday.
I mean, I will admit, I mean, the Beatle world was not looking for another Lennon comp. I think everybody was expecting kind of a follow-up to the Imagine Ultimate Box with a Plasticona Band deep dive, or maybe even a Double Fantasy deep dive for John's birthday. So when we heard that it was a greatest hits comp, I was kind of let down because there's been so many. I bought it. I mean, it's going to arrive Monday from Amazon. I like the mixes that I've heard so far. I'm looking forward to the surround mixes. I'm a big fan of surround mixes, so that's a big plus for me. It's going to be curious to see. I guess the mantle's being passed from Yoko to Sean, who's going to manage the estate. Yoko, I think, is in very poor health. She's in her late 80s. So Sean's kind of taken over. So what's his take on it? Some odd choices for this. The track Angela.
Angela.
Usually doesn't pop into mind when you think of John Lennon's greatest hits. But
I enjoy that song. But okay, but Give Me Some, first of all, Give Me Some Truth is not necessarily a greatest hit. It's a best of. And it's like, I guess the comparison would be like Pure McCartney, that has some deep tracks in a way. And to me, what I like about it, and my channel here, those of you who watch me, know that I do get political occasions. It pisses some people. They get so fucking bonkers. They say, you know, I came here for the music. I just want the music. To me, music and politics has mixed for centuries. So, you know, up front,
especially if you're going to talk about John Lennon. I mean, you can't.
Absolutely. And the title of this, Gimme Some Truth, Sean didn't pick that by accident. There's a shit show going on politically now. And, you know, none of us know how John would react, but I think a lot of us have a clue.
I think we know how John would react.
Yeah, well, in terms of his production and stuff, would he run in the studio and record something at this point? But anyway, it's funny how people have disbanded and went in different directions for this. But anyway, that's
I like the cover graphics a lot, and that's been.
Well, I do too. Some people didn't like some people didn't like it, the thing pointing in his ear, and that's a cropped out shot from a different photograph with a Yoko's in the shot, and they stripped it out. I love the graphics. So
actually, I like the advertising. You know, isn't there an Instagram thing where you can have an arrow pointing at your own ear or something?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's reminiscent, which we're going to get there, to the Listen to This campaign. Yeah. Listen to this postcard, listen to this poster, etc. So why don't we get going? You start, and I'll jump in. We're going to kind of go in chronological order. We put together groupings, these records from the avant-garde experimental through the main albums, through live and singles and comps and so on.
Can you show this on television? Two Virgins started his solo career. Did you buy this when it came out?
Yeah, well, my story.
That in the next one.
There was a mall I went to in Daly City, Serramonte Mall, and I knew this was coming out, 1968. I heard that John Lennon was putting an album out, and we heard the name of it. I don't remember hearing details about it, and I remember going up to the store in the mall and saying, "Do you have the new John Lennon album?" And they said, "Are you sure you want it? We keep it behind the counter." He pulls it out, and this is how it came. It comes in this sort of slip sleeve. And of course, I took it home and I opened it. Now, I don't know if this shocked me more or listening to it shocked me more. It's an avant-garde record of them who, you know, they made love and they got up in the morning and made tapes, and, you know, or they made tapes all night and they woke up and got in the morning and made love, how this story goes. So I was amused.
I didn't know anything. I mean, I heard about it. I mean, obviously the cover got all the press at the time, but I guess I never went up to a counter and asked for it. I didn't see it on any shelves on a record store.
Capitol and EMI wouldn't release it. Tetragrammaton had to release it.
But I did buy this one, which was the next one. Came out a few months later, Life with the Lions. And when I bought this, this is my story with this one. I bought this at Tower Records in San Francisco at Columbus and Bay. And I don't know whether it was an open copy or something, but I remember taking the sleeve out, and it showed the track listing, and there was a song called Cambridge 1969, which was 26 minutes long. I said, okay, cool, you know, because it's the late 60s and people were doing these long jam songs, and looking at the other side. Right? So I take the album and bring it up to the counter, and I'm this pudgy, nerdy little 14-year-old kid, you know. I mean, and the clerk at Tower Records said, "Are you sure you want to buy this, kid? I mean, it's pretty wild stuff. And have you heard it?" And I lied. I said, "Oh yeah, I heard the song No Bed for Beetle John." So I brought it home and, you know, put it on my stereo, and, you know, it's $3.99 or whatever it cost, which is a lot of money for, you know, it's my allowance when I was, you know, 14 or whatever I was. And I put it on, and if you've ever heard this thing, Cambridge, you know, it starts, you know, feedback, and then Yoko, you know, does her thing, starts screaming, and I'm waiting for it to break into a song.
And it never does.
And it never gets there.
Ahead of their time. The noise, industrial music, the avant-garde stuff, ahead of their time. And not for, quote, Beatle fans and Beatle music fans. It was a whole different audience that Yoko got thrust into. This is when she, right after she had her miscarriage. She had 2 miscarriages.
Of the 3 experimental albums, here's the third. I don't have the box handy. But, a wedding album, which is a nice concept package. It's got all this crap in it. A wedding, there's a marriage license, and it's got a
I love this. This would have been a great album
nice
cover. What a great cover.
Foreshadow of Double Fantasy 10 years later. This one, what does this have? That long, what's the George and Martha? Do you know? Remember
John,
that record?
Yoko. It's got a wonderful book.
Yeah. It's a nice souvenir. It's a good.
It's got
slice of wedding cake in there somewhere.
Another John's Doodles. It's got another book, and their marriage, which a lot of these shots John did is famous erotic and non-erotic lithographs were based on these photographs.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, it's got a slice of wedding cake.
There you go. Nice package. Well,
beautiful. And everything's white. Everything's kind of that Yoko minimalist avant-garde white. You know, I've always been a defender of Yoko, and it's really sad that I have to be a defender. But people like to jump on her. People get pissy and, to me, selfish about it. You know, the whole thing. She was an avant-garde artist, part of the Fluxus movement, before she even met John, and was known in her circles. Now, granted, those circles aren't for the masses. So being thrust into, you know, a Beetle girlfriend, then a Beetle wife. But interesting.
One of the things I like about being such a Beatle fan of these past 50 or 55 years is they have taken me in so many journeys. And these albums by John and Yoko, you know, for a 14, 15-year-old kid like I was like, you know, it's like altered my mind. I mean, I couldn't relate to them. But it exposed me to a different concept. I mean, you know, and Yoko's later albums, you know, took me on this journey. It was like you said, Fluxus and, you know, all sorts of, you know, avant-garde.
John Cage, all the minimalist classical composers.
So I have grown to appreciate those 3 albums a lot more than I did.
Well, and we totally understand. I mean, we're not going to defend those, that everyone should like those albums. They're not for the masses. They're a very sliver of music lovers or avant-garde art lovers. There's really more of the art and the concept of the art. And David and I have talked years and we've had our own conceptual art bits, and where nothing is real, nothing to get hung about, where it's sometimes the concept is better than the ultimate art. It's the idea and the creation of it. And David and I talked about this, and I've talked about this many times in my video, how the Beatles turned me on to classical music, because the soundtrack of Help, whether it was them specifically, probably not, but Prelude to Lohengrin of Wagner, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, Indian music with George Harrison, Ravi Shankar, and Within You, Without You, and Inner Light, and I got really, David and I both are really into Ravi Shankar, Indian music, Radhakrishna Temple, those records that George Harrison and the Beatles exposed us to. So
solo years.
1970, 50 years. This is why I think David mentioned a lot of people thought there'd be a 50th anniversary expanded version of this.
One of the greatest albums of all times. Stripped down John, raw. This is one of the few albums in my life that literally stopped me cold when I heard it for the first time. I just like could not believe what I was hearing, especially the song God. I heard that on the radio before the album came out, and I taped it. I was taping. I knew they were playing the new Lennon album, so I had this little boom box with a cassette, and I was like taping cuts. So I recorded it, and I had to put it on constant repeat. Just amazingly raw album.
This is when John was going through his, and Yoko, he was going through his primal screen, Arthur Janoff, primal therapy, heroin they both were involved with, unfortunately. I didn't pull it here, but there's a companion Yoko album that has the exact same cover, but they're reversed with a young picture of Yoko on the back. Right. There you go. And that album
also a great album. Very underrated.
With Ornette Coleman is on that record. It's such a
crack, yeah.
It's an avant-garde, same band except Ornette Coleman is added. Incredible. I love the sound of this record too. It is just the drumming, the Jim Keltner drumming and Klaus
Ringo drumming. Excuse me. Ringo's drumming. Great drumming by Ringo.
Yeah.
On that.
It's got a great sound. All right.
All right.
One everybody loves. The anthem.
Imagine. Double barrel opening shot by John Lennon. Two great albums. This one, sweeter. There was a thought. This is not an original thought by me, but it was a discussion on the Steve Hoffman forum about this album and comparing John Lennon and Paul McCartney. Now, Paul McCartney's got a 5-decade-long career. Amazing. John Lennon has actually only about a 5-year career because he took 5 years off. 5 years versus 5 decades. All of Paul McCartney's solo career will be forgotten. It's inconsequential, really. Lennon has had not one, but two standards that will live far beyond him. One is the song Imagine. It is his signature song out of the 200 songs he's written. Imagine is bigger than him. The other standard is Happy Christmas, War Is Over, which we'll get to in a minute. So great album by John.
This is a reissue from 2011, a mini box set of some songs from Imagine and demos. Imagine Sessions that were released later on the Imagine box set that came out in the last couple
I don't know what that is. Is that a bootleg?
It's came out 2011 vinyl.
Huh.
2-record set. It has the actual album.
Okay.
And then it has Sessions, which is kind of a nice collection. A lot of all this stuff ended up on that set later. It had obviously recreation of the poster again, but the Sessions has Baby Please Don't Go, Imagine, different vocal, How Do You Sleep, Jealous Guy, Oh My Love, I Don't Want to Be a Soldier. So obviously all this stuff is superseded by that. And then this came out recently when that came out. This is a vinyl version of just some of the extended and outtakes. Because people want to see vinyl here as well.
So I hear.
Okay, next. A problematic political album.
Oh yeah, so a double shot of John Lennon, 2 classic albums. Then he moves to the United States, to New York. Yeah. Good try. This album, I like it more than I did back in the day. I think it's unfortunate. I don't think Elephant's Memory was a great band for John.
I agree.
He stuck with them for a few years. It's a shame he didn't have a better backup band. Some of these songs, New York City, which is kind of a sequel to the Ballad of John and Yoko. I like Luck of the Irish. I think it's a nice song. It's interesting that Sean picked Angela for the new, package that's coming out this week. Weird choice. I think in some ways it's the weakest song on the album. You're laughing. What's the line? They gave you coffee, they gave you tea, but they gave you everything but equality.
That was a weird time. You and I were about to graduate high school.
Yeah.
This is 1972, and this might have come out right after. I graduated in February or end of January, early of that year. I forgot what month this came out.
It was around then. It was our senior year of high school.
This came out probably just end of spring, early summer at the latest. It says this album was completed March 20th, 1972, their third wedding anniversary. It says it right there, David.
There you guys.
It wasn't problematic. And I remember watching, this is when he did a week on the Mike Douglas show too. And Chuck Berry was on and Abby Hoffman was on. And Mike Douglas he went along for the ride. And if you get a chance, watch those videos of that week of Mike Douglas show. And the Mike Douglas show was an afternoon talk show, and there was always a guest host for the whole week. And they had John and Yoko, and they were able to invite whoever they wanted to. And boy, did they. I agree. Elephant's Memory is a terrible band. This deserves, if it exists, some kind of stripped down version without all the crap, because there's good songs underneath here, some great songs. And talk about, the Fillmore.
It's got a bonus second disc, the sleeve, which is actually kind of interesting. So it's got, on one side is John at the Fillmore East with Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention. And there's kind of a story about that. And the other side is the Plasticona supergroup with Clapton and George Harrison and Delaney and Bonnie at the Lyceum for a War is Over Christmas thing.
The Mothers part emulates, that's the cover, the 71 Live at the Fillmore East with the Mud Sharks and Flo and Eddie. That's taken from that series of concerts.
Zappa was really pissed at that because, I mean, John and Yoko talked themselves on stage. So, okay, they do this set. And then Zappa's version is that as a courtesy, he sent John and Yoko a dub of the 16-track master that they recorded, because Zappa was recording it for a live album, which he put out. And then Zappa said, all of a sudden, the show comes out on this John and Yoko album, without his permission. John and Yoko retitled a Zappa song as one of theirs, mixed Flo and Eddie out of it. They don't exist. There is a Zappa's version of that set. It came out on one of the trillion albums that the Zappa people have.
The Zappa state. I haven't heard that. I should check that out.
It's on the hard drive.
Okay.
But you can hear Zappa's mix of the same thing. So.
Okay.
All right. Kind of a after some time in New York City, I guess, kind of a comeback to John.
Mind Games.
He dropped Yoko.
I really love this album, but I remember hearing this album because this is the first John Lennon album that came out when I first got a job working in a record store in '73. And this came out, and I remember not liking the sound. I thought the sound was atrocious. That's why when they mixed the CD the first time, I forgot what year that was, 12 years ago. They remix this album. It sounds so much better. To me, the mix on this is terrible, but I love the songs actually. And it's funny, if you heard that interview, there's an interview going around, or there's a BBC program that Sean Lennon interviews Julian, Elton John, and Paul McCartney. And one of Sean's favorite songs is Mind Games. And what I've heard so far, the remix, I liked it. What I have in here, this is a little special extra thing. I worked in a record store. This is the promo. This didn't come in the album, but this is what we got to hang up in the store. So I have a little cool promo here of this.
Mind Games has a much better band. It was the companion album by Yoko is Feeling the Space. And Yoko did this with a bunch of New York studio.
David Spinoza.
And I forget who. But John used the same band. He was kind of like, okay, I'll get back to work, and use the same band as Yoko did for that. I like this record. It's kind of.
I like it too. I think it's underappreciated.
Asimu Sane I like a lot. Out of the
One Day
Blue.
at a Time.
I know. Decent record. The lyrics, John, I think, was getting lazy in this. I think after the first two albums, Plastic Ono Band, Imagine, John's career dived into mediocrity. With some high points. I think he got lazy. He tended to often use a lot of like hip cliches. You know,
Make Love Not War.
I don't want no Pig Brother scene. You know, things like that.
And he was drenched in the politics of the time.
It was just, you know, Abby Hoffman, Jerry Rubin swirling around him.
Very political. And that, it pissed some people off then too. It's amazing though when we talk about this, because think of this is like 3 years. Now an artist waits 4 or 5 years before they put another album out. So they were, even though there's some mediocre pieces.
A year, yeah.
One, exactly. And then we're going to go into
Walls and Bridges.
The album during the May Pang time. From these are drawings he did when he was a child, when he was age 11 in 1952.
Where's this? My personal story with this, as this album was coming out, I got to meet John Lennon. And here's the autograph that I got. See that? So he was, John was in San Francisco with May Pang to plug this album, and went down to the studio, and he was right there.
KSAN Radio.
KSAN Radio. Here I've got a CD of that. So he was very nice. Signed that. Chatted for a second. This is a really good record.
I love this record. I love this record.
I would like, listen to this. I would like to see a stripped down version of this one too. You know,
there are some pieces. There's that, yeah.
Then Love Avenue, and there's you know, so a lot of the rehearsals which don't have kind of this 70s sort of production on it. But the songs are good.
He had a number one.
It was only number one, wasn't it? Well, until he died.
Yeah, you could tell the story. Elton John, whatever gets you through the night.
Yeah, he was friends with Elton John. Elton John, John Lennon had sort of a little bit of a partnership going on with each other's records in the mid-70s.
A little bit of a drug problem partnership.
Maybe. This was John's alcohol and coke here. But Elton John is on the track, What to Get You Through the Night, and Elton John says it's going to be a number one hit. And John said, no, don't be ridiculous, it won't be. But made him promise, if it is, you need to come and make a guest appearance. And lo and behold, it did go to number one, and led to John Lennon's last appearance in concert.
Madison Square Gardens. I saw her standing there, Lucy Sky Diamonds with Elton John. And that's where John got back together with Yoko.
Which is why Elton John is Sean Lennon's godfather.
There you go.
There you go. So, good album. Good songwriting.
Talk about it.
Good idea. This actually was started before Walls and Bridges. Phil in LA during the separation from Yoko's, hanging out with Harry Nilsson and Ringo and others. What's that version with the?
This is a later UK Music for Pleasure, their budget label.
Okay. Because the name John Lennon wasn't big enough. So
exactly.
So with Phil Spector, let's do oldies, rock and roll. And you know, Phil Spector, you're in charge. You can do whatever you need to do. I'll just be the singer of the band. And
It's terrible. It's terrible. The only good thing about it to me is Stand By Me.
That's good. I mean, it's not. No, I don't think it's terrible.
It's terrible. The
It's not terrible.
arrangements are terrible.
It's so much less than it could have been. Um, that's the well. So in that one, so there was a lawsuit over "Come Together." And there's a line, he come on flat top, grooving up slowly, is from a Chuck Berry song. The owners of that song, the publishers of that song, were suing John for copyright infringement. So there was a thing going on. Part of the settlement, John said, well, I'll record a bunch of songs that you publish, and that was okay. He sent along a rough mix of the album, so progress, and they put it out on a, TV only, KTEL, the rough mixes for that.
Adam 8 Limited.
So Capitol had to rush release, or Apple had to rush release the official version.
Yeah. I think it's a massive failure.
I wrote this as his worst album.
Okay.
Then the retirement years. So back together with Yoko. You were just mentioning, the 5 years. I think that today, it is looking back 40 years. It's hard to imagine how upset people were with John Lennon disappearing. Now it's typical artists. Adele, let's use Adele as an example. Put years and years and years between albums. But back in the 60s and 70s, artists were expected to put out something a year. And I remember that from 1975 to 1980, John Lennon disappeared. Yeah. You didn't see pictures of him. He didn't show up at, didn't do any press. He was like gone.
You started hearing things about him being a house husband and making cakes or baking cakes.
A little towards the end of that, you started hearing it, but really you heard nothing. And in the Beatle world, the prior to that, 70 to 75, the question was, when are the Beatles going to get back together? And then you start, when is John Lennon going to make an album? Wasn't until, was it late 79 or early 80, John and Yoko took out a full-page ad in the New York Times. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
That sort of said what we're doing, and it was kind of full of kind of a magical language, but, say, we're all right, we're here, it was the first sign that things were in the John and Yoko world were kind of coming back to life, at least as far as public were concerned.
I want to tell a story about our little autobiography. David and I met in junior high school, but we really got friends more in high school. And in 1978 was my first trip to England. The following year, 79, David went. When David came back, we kind of compared notes and we started talking about, God, there's nothing, the people in England don't know anything about the Beatles or where the Beatle places are, because we, Abbey Road and between Liverpool, London, and all the tour sites, they kind of kept saying, there's nothing here to see, there's nothing here to see. So we started in late 79 or mid 79, whenever David came back, we started the idea of the book we ended up doing, The Beatles England, the travel guide. And then this whole thing happened. We went in March 1980. David and I went March, April, whatever. We went to England for about 2 weeks, I think, 10 days, whatever it was, and went to Liverpool, London, and Hamburg. And we took pictures, especially for this idea, for this book. We went together. Cut to later in the year, David's talking about the whole story, and the rumors start happening, and John Lennon and Yoko Ono are back in the studio. I don't remember any specific details, but here's a memory that I have, and I have photographic proof here. I lived on a street called McAllister Street, literally right behind the Jefferson Airplane Mansion in San Francisco near Golden Gate Park. And I was out of the music business then. I'd just been out. Oh no, I was working for a label, ABC Records then. And I got some promo copies, and David came over to my house, and it wasn't the album yet, but I got promo copies of this 12-inch single. And David, you might not remember this.
I do remember. You have that picture of me holding it up at night. Yeah, that's me thousands of years ago. I
This
had a
is this is 1980. David came to my apartment and we blasted. It's a 12-inch 45. One side is just like Starting Over, and the B side, or the other side, I don't know if it was the B side, is Kiss, Kiss, Kiss. I remember blasting this through my JBL L100 speakers, and I think I said to David, or I said to whoever I was playing this to, I love Kiss, Kiss, Kiss better than Starting Over. I think I mean, I got what John was doing. I didn't really dig the whole Elvis little parody in his voice. I mean, it's a great song, believe me. I think the rest of the album is better. I think that's one of the weakest songs on the album, and that was the first single. But I just remember that night, and this is a promo copy, not for sale. I don't know if this ever came out commercially as a 12-inch. I don't remember, but there's David in front of my house with your grandfather's, what's that car you were driving?
Oh, that was my car. My grandmother gave it. It was a 1954 Chevy Bel Air, green. That my grandmother gave it to me when she stopped driving. So I was driving around in that. I remember that night. I love the single. It was so good to hear John's voice again. Remember
I mean, his voice sounded great.
Back in the 70s, a 5-year gap was like a lifetime.
Right.
You know, here he was back, and I remember thinking, good to hear his voice, but you know, saying that's the best song he wrote in the last 5 years. It was kind of okay. And again, love Yoko song, Kiss, Kiss, Kiss. Remember, you're coming out of the new age B-52s, Lena Lovitch, that kind of stuff. Yoko's tracks seem just so up to date and cutting edge.
Her songs were fresher. John even said when he heard B-52's Rock Lobster, they're doing you, Yoko, mother. They're doing you. And that was so great. Her stuff was fresh at the time. I was into a lot of new wave and punk, and post-punk was happening. And that was fresh. John Lennon's stuff was great, but the Beatle stuff, it wasn't as dramatic. Right?
I think
yeah.
The Yoko tracks on previous John's albums, like Sometime in New York City, were kind of mediocre, but Yoko really came into her own with Double Fantasy. I think Yoko's stuff. What's chimed? Something just chimed. Yeah. So Double Fantasy comes out, and it's it is a joy to hear. So exciting. And John was, are we going to talk about what we're going to talk about? Is this the place we're going to put it in?
Well, it's just about, yeah.
It was so good to have John back.
Yeah.
With that.
And then they released, I think, well, it did really well, but it wasn't like a massive hit.
It only been out a few weeks before the murder. I mean, it was doing well. It didn't skyrocket to #1, but it was selling well.
And they had sort of almost like a bidding war, but Yoko actually met with different people, but met with Geffen. And Geffen, there was one of those kumbaya existential experiences that David Geffen and Yoko felt that David was the one we need to sign with. And they brought in Jack Douglas, who had produced Cheap Trick. And there's a whole the outtakes that Cheap Trick was on some of the tracks that weren't initially released. They redid them, but I like the sound of this record a lot.
Nice bright sound.
Right. And this came out, I think it came out in October or November. I don't remember now.
November, I think.
And then, of course, I guess, yeah, we'll talk about it now.
When this come out, 10, 12 years, 15 years ago, stripped down version. That was kind of took all the backing vocals out, and it's not an acoustic version. It's it's got electric guitars, but it's got John's voice, single
track. Let it be naked, kind of that in that.
This is good. If you into making playlists like I do all the time, I have like on my phone I have a John Lennon 1980, so I have Milk and Honey and this and Double Fantasy. I use these versions because these versions go better with the Milk and Honey less produced tracks.
Right. Okay, I'm going to cut to Monday lunchtime, December 8th, 1980. David and I were working on our book, which would become the Beatles England. I think we were thinking of calling it a Beatle Fans Guide to England. That was the working title during it all. And we were working on this since 1979. We'd come over and we'd make excuses not to write and go to some cafe or some museum, or but then we would write.
We made a lot of those excuses.
And then we took mushrooms once and we wrote the Stonehenge section. So if you read oh, come on. This is 40 years ago. We wrote the Stonehenge section on mushrooms, or at least—
I'm not a public school teacher anymore. So.
Right. But anyway, we had lunch at Red's Java House, which is on the San Francisco Bay on the Embarcadero, where at that time you could get a double cheeseburger on a French roll and a bottle of Bud for $1.65.
In a bottle.
So a bottle of Bud usually comes in a bottle. And anyway, we had that. David was working for a small independent theater chain, which is one of the great theater indie revival.
With a prototype hippie art house theater, the surf theater.
It was the Surf, the Clay, the Lumiere, the Castro, all these great theaters in San Francisco. And because of David, I got turned on to all this independent cinema throughout the 70s. David was a film major at San Francisco State. I was broadcasting, and I would go see Kurosawa films and Truffaut films and Renoir films and Louis Buñuel, all the foreign cinema. Every time there was a week, so whoever the classic director was, I'd go see a lot of those films because I'd get on the guest list of all, and there was a small chain. So the night of December 8th, David gets me and two of my friends, a friend named Steve and a friend named Bennett, tickets to the Clay Theater on Upper Fillmore Street to see this film. This is called Kagamusha, and it's one of the later Kurosawa films, one of the later samurai films he made. It's in gorgeous color. So David gets me passes to the theater. David is working at the theater across town that evening on a Monday night. At the end of this movie, the protagonist is on the beach, and literally a row of samurais are shooting arrows into this one guy, and he falls on the beach. But literally, it's almost like Bonnie and Clyde. It goes on, and all these, arrows are going to this one guy, and he kind of falls down. I don't remember all the details. And so the lights are starting to go up, the credits are rolling, and I'm on the end of the theater, on the end of the row, and a guy taps me on the shoulder. And it turns out he was the manager of the theater. He says, "Are you Norman?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "David's on the phone. You got to talk to him. Something's important, or you got to call him at the Surf Theater." And they knew me because I got passes, so he came down and got. So I'm walking out of the theater. Oh, no! The manager said, "Got to call David. Apparently, John Lennon was shot." So I go, and I'm literally trying to get my money in the phone booth to the left when you come out of the theater doors. And I called David, and all I heard him say is, "Yes, Norman, it's true." And it was such a gut-wrenching experience. I was seeing a woman named Jenny at the time. I called her, and she said, "Yeah, you got to come over." And of course, we all have stories like that. What's your side of it? I mean,
that night, here's kind of a weird story. Two stories about the night John Lennon died. So I was running this theater, the Surf Theater, and a year earlier, something late 1979 or something, we have a mutual friend, Ziggy, and so it's 1979. He calls me at the theater and says he just heard on the radio that John Lennon died. This is 1979, and it turned out that the disc jockey had been playing a Beatles song and then came back on the air. And what he had meant to say was, "I have some bad news. John Wayne died tonight," but he said John Lennon. So a mistake. So
God.
Yeah. So all right, that's over with. So it's Monday. It's another Monday night, Monday, December 8th, in the evening, about the same time. The phone rings, and it's Ziggy again, and he heard from. He had friends back east, and he said local radio is reporting John Lennon has been shot. So I run, I turn on the radio in the cafe there, and they were playing A Day in the Life, and just the blood drained out of myself. It was like, that was, and then I guess I called you. The other weird story I have about the John Lennon murder. So John Lennon was killed on a Monday night. That weekend, Saturday, I was doing household chores, vacuuming and stuff like that. And as I would normally do, I took an album out and played it. So the album I played was Revolver. Back here's my old copy. I took it out, put it on, and went around vacuuming, and the album ended, and I came to put it away. And I noticed, and you can barely see it here anymore, and there's some spots, I noticed drops of blood on the cover, mostly on John. It's sort of faded after 40 years now. And I thought, well, sometimes you cut yourself by accident, you don't realize it, but, I'd had no cuts on my hands, and the cat was fine, and I don't know, I just kind of wiped it and put it away. That was Saturday, Sunday, Monday night, John's dead, and then there's, where did those drops of blood come from? So I'm not usually that type of person,
I remember you telling me that story.
At all.
Yeah.
But there was, you can see some of the blood right there, dried.
That's a Ringo is dead clue.
Ringo is dead.
All right.
Yeah. So,
Well, let's move on. Let's talk about the posthumous albums. We can go through these a little quicker, I think. But
Milk and Honey, yeah. I'm wondering of what this album, what
it could have been.
the next album would have been, because I'm willing to bet that none of those takes from John would have ended up the master take.
No, and it seems unfinished. It seems almost like better than demos, but like working,
They were demos. They were in the studio. They were from the same sessions as
right, but they don't seem
they were rough takes.
They don't even seem like the final vocal in some cases.
Well, that's all they were just,
Right.
vocal. I mean, it's okay. It is the Yoko tracks on that were recorded later. They're not from 1980. Then they start putting all this stuff out. That's just
this is a 12-inch. Nobody told me. This time they were putting a lot of 12-inch singles. Remember, the whole late 70s was the disco period, and 12-inch singles became a big deal. I got a pile of singles later, but so this was a kind of a 12-inch single. Everything was released as a 12-inch, 45 RPM. But the interesting thing about this, there was some sort of falling out with David Geffen, and this came out on Polydor.
Polydor, yeah, Yoko had signed. So
yeah, I don't remember. That's a whole other political, personal story. I don't know. Maybe her tea leaves were wrong, and I didn't pull out too. I think this is a good place, and I don't remember exactly the timeline, but this was Geffen. But this is an important thing to talk about.
That was Yoko's first. That was, if you want.
John was holding a copy of the final.
That day, December 8th, was a busy day for John and Yoko. They did an interview. Annie Leibovitz was at the Dakota doing a photo session for an upcoming Rolling Stone cover. That was done. And then that evening, they left the Dakota for the record plant. The last autograph John Lennon signed was for Chapman on Double Fantasy. And the track that they finished was Walking on Thin Ice.
Which I think is some of the most interesting. To me, it's Yoko's and John Yoko combo masterpiece.
Yeah. John's guitar on that is incredible.
His guitar is rocking. It's great. It's got a great beat to it, a great mix to it. That repetitive mix that they did, the kind of repetitive thing. Yoko's just bursting out and her screaming and crying. And
I was throwing up.
And that came out not long or the next year after John died. And when you heard that, it seemed like that night. You could just imagine that being recorded after what happened. Just amazing.
I'm holding a cassette of the final mix in his hand as he got out of the car.
Right.
one of a series of posthumous albums that Yoko has put out. This one came out mid '80s. When did this come out?
Cover by Andy Warhol, 1986.
So it's got Walls and Bridges kind of era stuff.
I like this. This is good.
Yeah. Here We Go Again, which is a Lennon Spectre song. Rock and Roll People, which, who did he give that to? One of the Winters. Edgar Winters, Johnny Winters, one of them. John gave him that song.
I wish they did a series of these on vinyl at the time, you know?
Yeah, side 2 has got some of the rough takes of the Walls and Bridges songs, kind of stripped down. Really nice release.
Yeah.
I like that one a lot.
Yeah.
What else we got? Posthumous stuff. I'm a big fan of this one.
That is great.
Acoustic.
That didn't come out on vinyl.
It didn't?
No,
okay.
Not that I know of. I mean, if it did, please send it to me.
John Lennon and acoustic guitar. There's a nice picture of John and Sean. Good collection. Hard play. Oh, that's the dialogue thing, isn't it?
This is just a dialogue, a conversation. It looks like the Russian Tea Room. I don't know if it is. A spoken word documentary. 1983. So this is earlier than the Menlove. Okay. This is also Polygram too. So
a bunch of stuff started coming out. I mean, John Lennon's records were selling like hotcakes in the years after. That's the soundtrack to the movie called Imagine. It's a documentary about John. Good collection. That's half of that, or about a third of that is Beetle tracks.
Beetle tracks, really well mastered, has a good sound to it. So recommend it if you pick this up as a comp. Is great. Before we get into the live albums, we talked about singles. I'm just going to go through, and you can say whatever you want about it, but some picture sleeves, and you can talk about the singles when they came out or what you want to say about them. Obviously,
Give Peace a Chance. Is that coming up first? Yeah, Give Peace, the first Plastic on a Band. Not a great record. I think what John Lennon said was that his job as a songwriter was to provide for the people, and the anti-war, anti-Vietnam movement was going on, and they were using leftovers from the civil rights, like We Shall Overcome. So he wanted to write an anthem for the anti-Vietnam War. So good, great single, Cold Turkey.
Great single.
Great single. Flip Side too is good. There's all sorts of talk that John offered that to the Beatles. Beatles were sort of a, kind of a working unit still then. I can't imagine a Beatle version of that.
I think this is a great single.
Probably his best. You know why it is great? Well, I was playing this when it came out in 1969. My mother opens up my bedroom door and says, "That's a toe tapper." And for my mother to say something nice about a John and Yoko record is a plus.
This is one of the few.
I love the B-side, a real sweet little ballad by Yoko, Who Has Seen the Wind.
And this is one of the few Spectre Lennon things. Well, I really like the sound of this. It's very reverb heavy, but I think it works for this song. And this is a perfect song to come out. I mean, it all, to me, without getting too political, and I'll leave. You can talk about karma right now in the world, and I won't mention any specific names, but instant karma is going to get you. It's going to knock you off your feet. There we go. That's someone commented that your veiled attempt at this and blah, blah, blah. I'm not very veiled about my attempts. They're pretty right in line with everything. This is a Record Store Day issue that just came out. The remix, Sean remixed this with help from, I forgot who helped him.
Apparently John wrote that in the morning, recorded it that afternoon or evening, just rounded up a band. George was there.
Instant karma, that was a whole idea.
Yeah, boom, and it was in the stores a week later. I
like this. It's cliched. This is a cliche period.
Yeah. I like the B-side though. That's a track from
it's not the Doors song. It's not the Doors song, is it?
Yeah,
Come on, come on, come on, now touch me, baby. Dun, 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 or I am so afraid. Dun, dun, dun. It's not that. I can see Yoko doing a Doors song, right?
Yoko covers the door. I would buy
Now,
that.
okay. This is a classic. One of the greatest.
That's what I said earlier. John has two standards that are going to transcend him. Imagine and Happy Christmas, War is Over. Great record.
I always loved the label how their faces turned into each other.
Green vinyl. Did he steal the melody from the song Stewball? Stewball was a racehorse. Da, da, da. Peter, Paul, and Mary did it. Same tune.
You know, whatever. I'm just going to show some other pictures. So his mother.
Mother.
It's kind of a rare one. Woman is a nigger of the world. Politically powerful song, but
actually it's a decent record. I like it.
Sisters, Oh Sisters, from sometime in New York City. Kind of a bizarre photo illustration.
Nine Games. What's the B-side of that? Oh, B-side is Meat City, right?
Yeah.
And that has a little backwards segment on it. And the backwards part says, check the album. Yeah.
I don't remember.
There's the album version and the single version have a different backwards thing on it.
This is what they would call, when they were making this, the Beetle track, Woman.
Yeah. Which came out after he died and rocketed to #1.
Right.
It's a beautiful track.
Beautiful Boys, Paul McCartney's one of his favorite Lennon songs. I love the piano bit on this.
Except the B-side is the Yoko song, Beautiful Boys.
Yes, I'm Your Angel.
No, the previous one. There's
right,
Beautiful Boy, which is John, and Beautiful Boy.
My mistake. Before you send your cards and letters in, my mistake.
Nobody told me. I really like it. Remember, it was like a spy movie. You knew somebody who had a tape of unreleased John Lennon material. And we went to his apartment somewhere in San Francisco, and he played us these tracks. You don't remember this? And he wouldn't give us a copy. He was so, paranoid about, the wrath of Yoko Ono that he couldn't dare.
I remember that now, but I don't remember who that was.
I don't remember. It was a friend of somebody you knew in the music business, but he got a cassette of these John Lennon songs that I think they all ended up on Milk and Honey.
The only thing like that I remember is Elliot Mazer, the producer, playing me the first time I ever heard the alternate Blood on the Tracks. He had tapes of that.
But anyway, remember he played these songs. I remember hearing the song "Nobody Told Me." I remember liking it.
Living on borrowed time. It's kind of a lightweight,
Stepping Out.
Stepping Out got a lot of MTV airplay. And then this was a Record Store Day thing a couple of years ago. A single bag that has Mother and Why, Imagine, It's So Hard, and Watching the Wheels, and Yes, I'm Your Angel. So kind of a weird selection, but there you go. Okay, let's go with the live things. You can take a bathroom break if you want out there, vinyl community.
How long have I gone? We got 2 live albums. So he's only put 2 live albums out. I remember.
It's an import.
I remember walking. This is an import. Yeah, walking into a record store, and just seeing this sitting there, and I knew it was a Beatle record. I just, I don't know why I said that, because it's just a blank blue with like a little cloud in the car, but it. John Lennon, September 1969 at the Toronto Rock and Roll Revival.
I don't know if this came in the UK copy, but the American copy, I remember even in the 70s, you'd get the calendar with it, and it was an old calendar, but it would like shrink wrapped over here, so it was really thick in the stores. And this
warping the album. Right?
Pardon me?
Did it warp the album with the?
Well, not really, but this is the calendar, and it's from 1970 calendar.
It's got 13 months too.
50 years ago.
I had that calendar up.
Yeah, I did too. I have a couple copies of it somewhere, so, but I won't go through every month, but that came with a live piece in Toronto. Briar Walker presents live piece in Toronto. Give peace a chance.
I think John Lennon doing that show, he came back, you know, kind of excited by it. And I think that's when he decided that the Beatles were over.
Yeah.
I want a divorce.
It's so funny years later, like I think it was in Eric Clapton's autobiography talking about that, how they were like treated like shit in a way. I mean, they were oblivious to the other members of the group. Like John got there up in front of the plane, got their limo, and they had to wait for someone else, for Alan White and Eric Clapton and you know, to get picked up and everything. It was kind of a bit of a shit show. I think they were just oblivious to the whole situation. But anything you want to say about this?
You know, Yoko put that out. This is the deluxe version of this needs to come out. So John his only full professional concert, Madison Square Garden. 2 shows, afternoon and evening, benefit for children's charity of some kind. Again, with Elephant's Memory, you know, could have been so much better. But I would like to see a deluxe version of both shows, complete. That album leaves the Yoko songs out.
Right. Let's rush through the key comps. Now, there's some on CD you probably have, I don't have, but obviously the first one is Shaved Fish. And we did a whole video on comps that gets into detail of these.
This one, the shaved part has trimmed down versions. Then that one came out on Geffen Records. You know, it had most of the Double Fantasy. The CD version of that is a little bit better. It has two additional tracks because it's Cold Turkey and a B-side that never made an album, Move Over Mizelle. So that's on the CD of that, and wasn't on the album.
This is Annie Leibowitz's photographs taken
December 8th.
At the end, December 8th. And this was a separate thing, Lennon Legend.
There's a lot of comps. They come out every 3 or 4 years.
I did hold up this earlier. This is the box set came out about 6 years ago that has all the albums, basically from Plastic Ono Band up through Milk and Honey. And on vinyl reissues of that. And then I guess we're just going to close out with some books and things, unless you have any other musical.
Just a couple of bootlegs that are really worth it. I really like this one. It's called the Dakota Beetle Demos. And it's you know, Free as a Bird and others, but it's got a bunch of tracks that John demoed but never put out. The other thing,
this is great. This is all the outtakes collection, the Lennon big
signature box.
Yeah, love this. Art
nice
director
design.
Tom Rochon, the art director, used to be at Warner Brothers, did this for Capitol Records. Beautiful design, with help from Yoko, or direction, I guess.
I think Yoko put out these are bootlegs here. But Yoko had a TV series or a radio series called The Lost Lennon Tapes, and tons of material came out. And they're bootlegs of that.
I have those too.
Great stuff. I mean, this is, you know, demos and alternate takes and, you know, home recordings and great stuff.
Now, just to kind of almost close out a couple things, I'm going to show we'll both show some books. We both have pretty big book collections, but I'm going to start out with these two. Obviously, the early Beatle days. To me, in John Lennon's career, these are very important. His art, kind of witticisms, bizarre in his own right, and A Spaniard in the Works from 1964 and 65.
I brought these two. These two books kind of bookend his solo careers. They are 2 long interviews. John was in very different places during both of these. So this was, you know, as the Beatles were breaking up, Bitter John, and this was in 1980, the Playboy magazine interviews.
This is a comp of that Jan Wenner interview for Rolling Stone.
That's a really good book.
Yeah, this is a collection of articles and interviews from Rolling Stone with John and Yoko by Jan Wenner, John Rockwell, Robert Palmer, Stephen Holden, Ralph J. Gleason, Ben Fong Torres, Jonathan Cott, Robert Christgau, some of the great rock writers of the time. And this is a great comp.
Of the dozens and dozens of books that came out in the wake of John's murder, I think that is one of the best. I brought this one too. Remember this one?
Pete Shotton and Nicholas.
Pete Shotton was was a member of the Quarrymen and John's best friend. And he wrote this with Nicholas Schaffner, excuse me. We got it autographed at Beetle Fest. Good personal.
Nicholas helped guide us when we were working on our book, gave us a few little tips. I remember Nicholas Schaffner was a good guy.
Yeah.
I'm going to show this just because I love this. This is the John Lennon letters.
Really,
a lot of letters, postcards, little funny bits to family, friends, Beatles, all kinds of people.
Because he was a funny writer, you know. So it's got every little scrap. Do we open the same page? No. Scrap that he's ever written, and postcards, and this is a really good, interesting read.
Yeah, it's a fun kind of anthology. Even seems to be more tragic. And the only kind of offshoot book I want to show is, this is a fun book, Chip Mattinger and Scott Rail. And what this is Lennonology, Strange Days Indeed, a scrapbook of madness. And this basically documents pretty much every day, more or less, from when John met Yoko through up until his death, 1980. I mean, this is for the obsessed.
Well, these crazy people like us who
I totally get
every little detail.
Yeah, there we go. So the last thing I want to show is a brick. Not the brick that David and I got. This is a brick from Menlove Avenue, where John lived with his Aunt Mimi. And they did a documentary on it before it was changed over. There was a documentary on the house and John Lennon, and now it's run and owned by the National Trust in Liverpool. There's like guided tours. They kept it pretty much intact, but to shoot some of this video downstairs, they had to open up a wall and to film to get the perspective, because they think of these little houses in Liverpool, and even though this is more middle class compared to Paul and George and Ringo, tiny houses to get back to shoot. They got permission to tear down the wall, and they sold 150 bricks from that wall. I have number 14 of 150.
How much did you pay for that?
I think I paid about $200.
Oh, all right, sure. And it goes to the profit go to the national.
They've gone for 500 or more, probably less when someone needs to. I mean, it's silly. I was making a ton of money then, and I thought, oh yeah, I need a brick.
Do you keep it next to the apple brick?
No, that's a whole other story, and that's for another day, another lifetime. So David, thank you. I did show that Annie Leibovitz. To me, I'm going to bookmark these because I have a bunch of photo books of famous photographers who did classic, iconic pictures of John Lennon. Obviously, this picture is so amazing, and it graced the cover of Rolling Stone, literally a special edition right after John was killed. And how amazing is this photograph taken the day John died? Oh my God! I mean, it's chilling when this came out, and it graced the cover. And then, to me, one of my favorite pictures from 1967 is Richard Avedon, and it's kind of iconic. Summer of Love, '60s, Sgt. Pepper, that whole thing. Richard Avedon is usually known for his black and white stuff mostly, and this was solarized in some kind of post-production darkroom thing. But the posters of this are just wild, and I just love.
From Look magazine in 1967.
Look magazine and Stern magazine in Germany. There's Abby Hoffman. Perfect.
Doing an imitation of Johnny Cash.
Exactly. And so, David, thank you. And thank you, everyone, for watching. And
hey, John.
War is over if you want it. Please Go vote, vote early, vote often. So Mazzy loves you.
And Bacon loves you.
Bacon and Maslow. Take care, everyone. Enjoy.